Next recognize the Congressman from Kansas, Mr. Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for all our witnesses for being here today. This is a great topic for us to be talking about. Obviously, when we look to the future, a lot of technology out there and where we can possibly go with the country. And I want to go back and, we talked a little bit about this, but, over the past 30 years, we've seen a number of innovations tied directly to the internet. And, a lot of rapid developments and adaptations. And really, it was impossible to know how the internet would function back when, it was first being formed. So, today we see that the blockchain technology and the capability there that gives Americans the ability to reliably record information without having an intermediary to act as the recorder of that information. I think there's a whole host of potential applications from across the economy, from land titles and ownership records to contracts and improving security, over and above what we frequently have talked about in terms of crypto technology as being used as a currency. And I think there's a lot of decisions we have to make in both areas. But just like when the internet was new, we need to be careful about how Congress approaches these new technologies and what regulations we put in place. Just like there were many false starts with internet during the dot-com bubble, but today it's really a critical tool that we have. It's a good thing that the Congress didn't regulate the internet out of existence in the 1990s before it was clear what all those uses could be. And I hope that, as we work through this process, we can come up with a goal that make sure that we don't impose unnecessary barriers to the innovation. I hope that, along with looking for protection from bad actors, Congress is very deliberative in its process and coming up with those legislative decisions that will help this technology grow and expand for things that we haven't even thought of today or discussed today. I do have a couple questions. Mr. Van Valkenburg, what do you see as some of the exciting technologies that are exciting applications that we can use with the blockchain technology going forward?
Thank you, Congressman. And your colleague, Mr. Schweikert, was going down this avenue as well. I think I'd like to talk about identity. So when we think of blockchain networks, as you said just now, we often think mostly about money. And cryptocurrencies, or the scarce commodity-like tokens that power them, are essential to the operation of these systems because they create a fair reward for anyone who donates computing power to secure the blockchains and the data on that blockchain. So you don't need to permission who can secure that data. You have an open competition of people securing that data and doing it transparently and getting a fair reward on the blockchain. But that said, once the blockchain is secure, you can put information in that blockchain that goes beyond merely a transaction where I pay Mr. Schweikert a Bitcoin. You could put a transaction on that blockchain where I testified in front of Congressman Schweikert, and I attested to my identity by using a unique cryptographic key on my phone when they let me in the front door. This kind of identity transaction is another intermediated transaction when it takes place on the internet today. We rely on major corporations to run our social networks, to run our credit reporting agencies, to run all of the tools and systems that identify us, that permission our access to buildings. The OPM uses major enterprise identity providers in order to secure government buildings for personnel. All of these ledgers are centralized and siloed and can ultimately be improved and decentralized by using open blockchain networks to secure identity transactional data rather than trusting one corporation or company to do that. To that end, Microsoft has pioneered something called the ION network. It's not Microsoft's technology per se. They're developing an open standard and contributing along with other corporations to a decentralized identity standard that would actually anchor identity data into the Bitcoin blockchain. So it's more secure and less vulnerable as a centralized data repository would be to hacking and ransomware and such.
So basically, what you've taken was very complex, trying to figure out how to deal with cryptocurrency, and now made it even much more complex in terms of all the applications we can. Yeah. So, I know I'm about out of time. I don't know if you can say a quick comment about cybersecurity and how that might affect and be positive through this.
Sure. So when we think of cryptocurrencies and cybersecurity, we often jump to ransomware because it is used as a payment for ransomware. I think it's important to point out that, as Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo said in a speech last week, quote, ransomware is not a cryptocurrency problem in the same way online fraud schemes are not the fault of the internet. In fact, I would go further and say that cryptocurrency technologies are ultimately the solution to ransomware cybersecurity issues, because the big tech paradigm of securing user data in a centralized database is what creates vulnerability to hacking. If we decentralize control over that data, decentralize a social network, decentralize an identity provider, you lose that single point of failure and that vulnerability from a ransomware and hacking perspective.
Well, you've certainly given us a lot to think about and try to figure out what we do. So, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.